Hey, Catherine. Hey, Liz, how you doing? John, what's going on, brother? Brittany, how are you doing tonight? Amy, how are you? Hey, everybody. With so many, I've added so many new followers, is what Facebook calls it, but I call you guys family. And with so many new family members here, just in the last month, after doing last night's video, and somebody was talking to me today also that they've never really heard my story. I'm going to give my story tonight. I'm going to tell my story. For a lot of people who don't know my story, well, you're getting ready to hear it tonight. Every time I give my story, and I've given my story numerous places across this country, is that I get vulnerable, and I tell you guys all the time is that the only way that we're going to get better is if we get vulnerable. So here I am tonight. I'm going to get vulnerable with you and tell you my story. Pastor Pat, I love you, brother. And so if you guys could share this out, I would appreciate it. Throw it out there to all your friends, family members, people that we know just might be struggling, who might need to hear my life story, about what it was like before, what it was like during, and who I am now. So, hey, Mandy White, how you doing? Star, how you doing? So I'm gonna share my story tonight. I was gonna before I get started, I was going to give a couple announcements. I'll be going down to Versailles, Kentucky on this Saturday. Yes, this Saturday with my brother Andrew Hager's having an event down there, and I'm gonna go down there to the Blameless Children event, and I'm gonna support my brother Andrew Hager, and then we're gonna have some fun, fellowship, and just for a great cause. Looking forward to it. And then the following weekend, I'll be going out to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'll be doing some work out there. I'm really excited about that. I really want to say, once again, a huge shout out to Pastor Ryan Navy from the new Huntington Church. That was an amazing video last night. I absolutely loved it. I look forward to a lifelong friendship, brother. Thank you very much. All right, everybody. I'm gonna go ahead and start this video tonight. I'm gonna tell you my story. So for those of you who've not heard it, you're getting ready to hear it. My story begins back in California. I was born in the year 1973. For all of you who are trying to add that up on your fingers, yes, I am 45 years old. I had an older brother. I was born into poverty. My mother was 14 years old when I was born, and I had an older brother, Jay, you all know. Was born into a very, like I said, very poverty-stricken home. My biological father, was a very abusive, very toxic individual. He beat my mother religiously, time and time again. Almost nearly killed her on numerous occasions. I didn't live in California for very long. I was only 4 years old when I moved. When my mom decided to pack up shop and get us out of that situation, and we decided to venture over here to Indiana, where my biological grandparents were. But before we got to Indiana, we made a stop in Idaho. Not even sure why, but we stopped in Idaho. My mom hooked up with this guy, which turned into giving me my little brother Tim. We weren't there very long, and just long enough for her to give birth to my little brother, and we eventually made our way to Indiana. The thing about my mother, she was drawn to very toxic and very evil men, unfortunately. We moved to Indiana. We finally moved to Indiana. I was probably about 5.5, 5, 6, maybe. It's been a long time ago. So, but he followed. My little brother's dad followed us, and he was evil. I think he was just as bad or worse than my biological father. He beat my mom almost to death in front of us. He caught up, found out where we were living, and it was. Like I said, my mother had some issues, and she was attracted to very evil and toxic individuals. Not soon after we got here, and my mother left me and my brothers in a car, parked on a very steep hill while she was in the house doing God knows what. My little brother managed to get the car put in neutral. The car rolls down the hill. We jump out the car runs me over. I was hurt very, very badly. I was in the hospital for a month or so, from what I've been told. We were taken from our biological mother. Now, I'm going to be very honest and very real with you guys and tell you that I had a really deep-seated hatred towards my mother for a lot of years. And for the fact that she never fought for us. She never decided to fight for me and my brother. She just let us go, and we didn't speak. And I didn't speak to my mother again for 13 years. We were put into foster care, and this is where God steps in. God has a funny way of doing that for us, right? He put us into an amazing house, amazing family, the Hicks family. How I got my last name, but that's not how I got it. I'll lead into that. You guys will see how I got that. We were in their foster care. Me and my two brothers were in their foster care. I acquired 3 older sisters and an older brother. They were amazing. It was like the family that you all would want to have growing up. It was that ideal family. No abuse, no verbal abuse. It was all about love and support and family functions, and just like that all-American family that you wish you could have. That's what that was. And I got to experience that and live that for about 4 years. Well, about the 4th year, being foster children, we were able to be adopted. And so this very, very, very multi-millionaire rich family from here in Indiana, about southern Indiana, wanted to adopt. They had raised their children, and now they were trying to do it again. Everything was perfect. They seemed to be like these amazing people. They had everything that anybody could ever want. And I was sold hook, line, and sinker. I was like, man, we went from an amazing family to now being able to have and do whatever it is we wanted. So we were getting in transition. They were flying us back from our foster family to their house every other weekend, me and my brothers, and they were, we were spending the weekends with them and getting to know them and who they were, and it was just working. Our life seemed like it was coming together. God was looking out for us. But this story changes very, how I should say it. It goes south very quickly. Now, as soon as the adoption was finalized, and when I say it changed quickly, I mean it changed the very next day. My father, my new adopted father, was a businessman. He traveled the world all the time. We hardly ever got to see him, maybe twice, maybe 2 days, 3 days out of the month. He was gone all the time. Didn't know what was going on. So he was literally gone the next day, and the abuse started the first day. Now, we lived with this family for 2.5 years, me and my 2 brothers. And during this 2.5 years, I broke about 27 bones by her hand. I was beaten with fire pokers. We were electrically shocked. We were forced and locked in our bedrooms for 3 and 4 days at a time. I was forced to watch her electric shock my brothers, and I didn't understand this. I didn't get this. I was like, how did this happen? It was like, one minute we were like, they were showering us with love, and the next minute it went straight Jekyll and Hyde. I was 8 years old when the abuse started, and I was about 10 and a half when it was finally exposed and taken out of that. But the hardest part of my story, but it gets easier every time I tell it, is because I choose to not let this own me anymore today. And it did for many, many years, and a lot of the reason why I chose to indulge in drugs, and the reason why I acquired this thing called the disease of addiction, is because of the sexual abuse that I had to endure during this 2.5 years. And I was the only one out of the brothers who had to endure that. And I often ask myself, why did I have to go through that But then again, I always tell myself I would have rather it have been just me than all three of us. You know, we often hear a lot about, females being molested and raped at young ages, but men choose not to talk about it. But you know what? It is part of my story, and I own it today. It doesn't no longer have any bearing in my life. It doesn't dictate how I send or where I send my life today. So about 2.5 years into this abuse, I was at school one day, and my teacher, I'll never forget her name. I love her to death. I still remember her name, Mrs. Bouse. I love you. I was in second grade, and she came up to talk to me, and she put her hand on my back, and I flinched because I was literally bruised from the bottom of my neck to my ankles. So she made me go into her office, and she made me raise my shirt up so she could see my back, and I still remember her scream. She called the police immediately, and they were brought in, and we were taken out of that situation and put back into foster care with the Hicks family. Immediately after we were put back into the Hicks family, the adoption was annulled, of course, and they refused to ever allow us to ever have to go through something like that ever again, and so they adopted us. Okay, so my life. Now this is where I want to talk about why I had this deep-seated root hatred towards females. And I acted, and I carried this into my adult life and how I treated the women in my life. That I felt like the women that were the most important, or who were supposed to be taking care of me or love me the most, hurt me the most. Starting with my biological mother, and then this adopted mother. But I don't think that way anymore, and I want everybody to be very clear. I don't think that way. I don't think every woman is like that. There's so many beautiful and amazing women in the world today that I am privileged to get to know, that I know personally, that are doing amazing things in the world. But at a young age, in my perspective, from a young age, I was very bitter and very hatred. I had hatred. We went to counseling because of all the abuse and stuff that we went through. We went to the counseling, but basically what I had done when I was going to counseling was that I just basically told the counselor what he wanted to hear, or what I thought that my mom and dad would want the counselor to give them feedback on. I manipulated them, and that's where was another good sign of me eventually acquiring this disease of addiction. I was a manipulator at a very young age. I didn't want to tell the truth. And so after the counseling sessions, although these counseling sessions did not work, obviously, because I wasn't trying to get better. I wasn't trying to let it out. I wasn't trying to talk about it. So what I did is I buried it away. I didn't want to talk about it. It was embarrassing. I was ashamed. I believed it was my fault. It was just all these emotions at a young age I wasn't prepared to deal with. And so I stuffed it away. I didn't deal with it. I didn't talk about it. And I just went on with my life. The thing about it, and I've told you guys numerous times in videos that I've done, if we don't handle our stuff, eventually these things will resurface. They will resurface. And I'm no different. Okay, guys? I'm no different. It did resurface. And it came back with a vengeance. About the age of 15 years old, it resurfaced. And I didn't want to deal with it at 15 either. And so what I did is I did the next best thing, so I thought. And what do we do when we don't want to deal with things is we get high, right? And that's what I did. I knew right away that pot and alcohol were never going to be my thing. You know, I tried those, and it was like one or two times, and I knew that wasn't what I wanted. I had something deep within me that just wanted more, demanded more. And I was going to find it, and I did, and I found that in cocaine. Now at 16 years old, I had acquired a major cocaine habit where I was doing 3, maybe 4, 8 balls a week at 16 with no job, no income. And so what do you do when you have to support a habit? When you have no income, you begin to rob and steal and manipulate. And I did that to my mom and dad. When I say my mom and dad from now on, I talk about Jack and Retha Hicks. I robbed my parents. I stole from my parents. I manipulated my siblings. I did whatever I had to do to feed this disease. And then eventually the cocaine wasn't enough, or I wasn't doing it enough, or I wasn't doing it the right way. And then along came this thing called a needle. I started shooting dope at the age of 17 years old. I hid it for a while. My family was very, very naive, and when it came to drugs, that just wasn't part of my family. Okay, and so I was able to hide this for a while. So I was in the game. I was shooting dope at 17, and eventually, you know, in that game, you know, you get hemmed up, you get caught up, you go to jail. You know, and at 19 years old, I was running serious amounts of cocaine from Chicago to where I live here in Indiana, and I got hemmed up, got told on, got wired up on, and with a substantial amount of cocaine. Substantial amount. I ended up catching a 14-year prison sentence at the age of 19 years old. 14 years. In Indiana at the time, you got good time credit. So basically, whatever they gave you, you had to do half of it. That's the way it was then. It's not the way now. You got to do 85% now, but then it was 50%. So I had to do a 7-year sentence at the age of 19. 2 months into my prison sentence, I was losing good time credit because I was failing drug test after drug test after drug test. The thing about me, I have done almost about 15 years of my life in the penitentiary, okay? And every day I was in prison, I got high. The thing about me, I was a manipulator. And I manipulated and I conned the Department of Corrections here in Indiana. Basically, what I told them is that I had some knowledge when it came to working in the hospitals. And the only reason why I said that, because I knew that the only place in prison that you could get a needle would be at the hospital. It worked. They gave me a job at the hospital, and I had access to the needles. And so I started hustling and doing what you do in prison. And my first overdose was in prison, sitting on a toilet in a prison bathroom. You see, back then, and when you overdosed, this was in 1994-ish, 1994, 95. They didn't have Narcan back then. Didn't have any of the stuff that we have today that could potentially save my life. Basically, then is they threw you in a tub of ice and they just prayed that you came out of it. I came out of it, obviously. So out of the 14-year sentence, I ended up doing about 8 years on that. 8 complete straight years. I was away from my family, my friends, my loved ones. Got out. I wasn't done now. Now I was mad. I was mad because they took 8 years from my life. I was mad because I still hadn't dealt with the underlying issues that had brought me into an active addiction. Eventually, we have to deal with these things, and I want to emphasize that tonight. We have to deal with the underlying issues that brings us into our active addiction. If we do not, they will resurface. So I got out of prison. Wasn't out very long. I think I was out maybe 2 months before I was going back to prison again for a 6-year sentence. Caught another drug charge. Now, I'm going to remind you guys, I have 13 felony drug convictions on my record. 57 misdemeanor drug convictions on my record. I am no saint, and as I've told you guys before, I don't try to be. Okay, I don't try to be. I stay genuine and transparent with you all because this is the way it works. This is how it happens, or this is how I get better, and this is how I encourage each and every one of you to get better. I was out for 2 months, and I ended up going back for 6 years. I ended up doing 4 years on that 6, and you know what? I still wasn't done. I wasn't done, and I remind you, I shot dope every day in prison on that sentence as well. I get out, and my brother Jay was there picking me up with my niece, and he tells me, "Are you done yet, brother? Are you done?" My family, I love them all dearly. I love them to death. Is that they didn't understand this. That I had all this potential to go on and have an amazing life. You see, in high school, I had straight A's in high school, surprisingly. I mean, you guys might be surprised. I had really good grades. I had a future in store for me. I was going to go to, surprisingly enough, I was going to go to West Point, and I was going to try to have this amazing military career. I had the grades for it. But this thing inside me, this hatred. I was so mad about what have it done to me. And I let it destroy the majority of my adult life. I'm gonna own that. I bought into the lie, and you see, and I emphasize it, and you guys wonder why I talk about the lie, because the lie means a lot to me today. You see, the lie is what almost killed me on 3 separate occasions. So I ended up doing 4 years on that 6th sentence, and I get my brother, like I said, he was there to pick me up, and he asked me if I was done, and I was like, man, I'm not even getting started. It's funny. It sounds kind of sickening to me to hear myself say that today, but that's exactly what I said, and that's exactly what I meant. I wasn't done yet. During my active addiction, I forecasted the way that I was going to die. I believed in my heart and soul that I was going to be that junkie who was shooting a shot of dope under a bridge, and that's the way I was going to die, with a needle in my arm. I had forecasted that, and I absolutely believed it. I wasn't out for very long again, and ended up going back to prison 6 or 7 months later, and for another 3 years. Go back to prison, and every time I went back to prison, they put me back in the hospital. Isn't that crazy? Every time, and I had access to the needles every time. Now I got high every day in prison. I get out on this last bit, and you know what? I was good. I wouldn't say that I was good. I just didn't get caught. Okay, for 7 years. 7 years. I had managed, I don't know if I had managed to figured out a system or what, but I was good. During that 7 years, I had some children. I had Chloe. I had my older daughter, Adesha. And I was a lousy father. That's the part of the story that really choked me up the most, is that how much of a piece of shit father I was. Sorry about my language. I wasn't part of my children's lives. I wasn't. And I had some sons, Dylan and Silas. I ended up getting put on probation about the 7th year I was out. That 7-year streak that I was talking about. I got put on probation and ended up violating probation because I had failed a drug test. and I was going to prison for 2 years. And I remember the day that I went to prison. Uh, I left the house that morning. Chloe was very young. Chloe was about 3 or 4. Dylan was about 2, and Silas was a baby. He was 1. Chloe, I remember her saying, she's like, "I love you, Daddy. I'll see you soon." I didn't see her for 2 more years. And I did 2 years in prison again, and I remember I was getting ready to get out on this last time I went to prison. My father comes and sees me. God rest his soul. I love you, Dad. And he asks me, he says, "Son, when is it going to be enough for you?" My dad asked me to make him a promise. He says, "Promise me that you won't be in your active addiction when I die." Of course, Dad, of course, I didn't believe that I didn't know I just didn't know. I just wanted my dad to be happy, and I wanted to give him the words that he wanted to hear. And so I tell my father, "Of course, Dad, I'm done. I'm going to figure this out." And I wasn't done. And that's the most crazy and sickening thing about an active addiction is that, the people that we love the most, we will lie to their face. I didn't stop. I just didn't get caught for a while. I was out for a while. And then, I went back home to my kids, and my wife had left me. I was married. I didn't tell you guys that. I got married to my now ex-wife, Chloe's mom, and the boys' mom. And she left me while I was in prison, and so I got out in the street, and I was bitter about that. I still had that deep-rooted obsession that wanted more and more and more. I hadn't dealt with my underlying issues. I hadn't dealt with nothing. I was basically still in the same situation I had always been in. And I contemplated suicide on a daily basis. In September 2015 was my last and final overdose. I overdosed, and I remember waking up to the hospital over here in Fort Wayne, and Chloe was there, crying. When your daughter asks you or says to you, "Do you not love me enough to stay clean?" During this overdose, I was lucky to be alive. I was actually clinically dead for 4 minutes. And during this 4 minutes, and this is a part of my story that people might get freaked out about, but something happened to me. God did something to me during that 4 minutes. And he spoke to me. And it sounded like he said, "Wake up. I'm not done with you." I ended up getting out of the hospital, and I was getting high again the next day. Sickening, isn't it? February 26, 2016 rolls around. It's the last day that I ever put any kind of drink, mind-altering drug in my body. February 26, 2016. I remember the last time I did a shot of dope. I get arrested. I get pulled over, set up. I had a substantial amount of drugs in the car. I knew with my criminal history and my record that I was getting ready to spend the rest of my life in the penitentiary. I was sitting in the car. Cops had it surrounded. Knew they were going to find the drugs. They weren't really hidden, that I wasn't hiding them. They would have found them easily. And under the car seat, my seat, I had a .45 handgun, pistol. Felon with a handgun is another crazy charge. And I was going to do the whole suicide by cop. I wasn't prepared to spend the next 50 years of my life in prison. But I had a picture of my daughters on my speedometer, and I had the gun in my hand, and I happened just to look up and see their picture, and it was enough for me to let go of the gun and just go to jail. It's awful funny how we turn to God when we're in a lot of trouble, right? I'm no different. I'm no different. I remember saying a prayer, and I remember it very, very vividly, and I remember the cell I was in. I was in cell R6. It's going to be part of my next tattoo. R6 is. I remember the cell very well. R6, and I got on my hands and knees, and I said a prayer to God, and I said, God, I know you probably don't want to do me any favors, but if you can just throw me a bone one more time, I promise you, God, I promise you I will devote my life to recovery. But not only will I devote my life to recovery, I will try to pull as many people out of this sick, dark world as I possibly can. I didn't think that prayer was going to go very far. But behind the scenes, something was happening for me, and I didn't know it. Is that I had a probation officer who absolutely adored me, who loved me, who believed in me, seen something in me. I don't know what it was, but she seen something in me, and she went to bat for me. And they started this program over here in my hometown called Drug Court, and she put my name as a participant in front of the judge and the prosecutor. I remember her telling me, when she first submitted my name to this Drug Court program, they looked at her and said, Dru Hicks? Are you crazy? He will do nothing but make a mockery of this program. He is not fixable. And I have talked to the prosecutor over here, the head prosecutor in my hometown numerous times. Actually, I work with the man today. And he told me he had three names on his desk of people who were never going to figure it out. People who were probably going to die from a drug overdose or spend the rest of their life in prison. And my name was at the top of the list. He said that one day in open court. Dru Hicks is not a success story. It will never be a success story. I ended up getting drug court. They loved this probation officer, the judge did, and he said, okay, we'll give him a try. And they let me out, and they put me in this sober living house over here where I live. That was part of the plea bargain. But they sentenced me. So basically, if I did not complete the drug court program, then I would be going to prison for this amount of time. And that amount of time was 57 years. No pressure, right, Drew? 57 years. So they were telling me basically what they said is, we're going to throw you into this sober living house. You're going to be doing all this stuff for drug court. But if you fail in any way, shape, or form, Drew, you're going to go to prison for the next 57 years of your life. Well, that would have been the rest of my life. I never would have seen the light of day again. So now I'm extremely scared, extremely nervous, because I had never done anything successful in my entire life. I did not even leave my room. I remember for like 2 days I was walking around on eggshells, scared to death. I started working this drug court program, going to all my therapy session meetings, going to case management, going to MRT, going to, there's all this stuff they're throwing in my lap immediately, going to my AA and my 12-step meetings, and I remember I had not tried recovery not one time in my life until I was the age of 42 years old. This is the first time I have been in recovery. Relapse is not part of my story, and God willing, I keep doing what I do. It will never be part of my story. I started working this drug court program, and it was a 1.5-year program. And I'm gonna add in here, I was the first person in the history of the drug court program where I live in my hometown to graduate this program perfectly. Not one sanction, not one missed meeting, not one. Perfect across the board. When I made that commitment in February in 2016 in that jail cell over there, R6, remember? I made it. I meant it. Excuse me. I absolutely, for the first time in my entire life, I meant what I told God that day. During this time in the sober living house, I created a page. A lot of you guys are a member of it wasn't a page, it was a group. A lot of you are members of this group called Clean and Sober, That's What's Up. I created that group over 3 years ago. If you're not a member, please go and add yourself to this group. Clean and Sober, That's What's Up. So creating this group, it got me on the news over here. It got me in the paper, and then it actually got me on the news. They came over to my house and they did a news cameras crew and talking about me helping people who were struggling with addiction. I wasn't a professional at the time, and so, but I had hopes. I think God, He put in my heart that this is what I was going to do the rest of my life. I know I didn't want anybody to ever have to go through what I went through my entire life. I pissed off the majority of my adult life. I spent most of my adult life in the penitentiary due to poor choices through my active addiction. I know I just didn't want that for some other young 18, 17, a 19-year-old kid. So with the recognition of creating this group, being on TV, now people started reaching out to me wanting me to work in this industry. I wasn't very familiar with the industry. I didn't know anybody in the industry, but I ended up started working for a company in South Florida, not Boca. It wasn't Boca. I didn't work at this company for very long. I'm not going to mention the name of it, but I was only there 3 or 4 months, and then along come this amazing and beautiful man named Christopher Ferry. Hits my inbox one day, and I don't even know who Christopher Ferry is at the time. And this is what I love about Chris. He's a very transparent man. And you guys know how much I love being transparent. He hits my inbox and he says to me, I'm Christopher Ferry. I'm the owner of Boca Recovery Center, and I would like to talk to you. Gives me his number. Can you call me or can I call you? And I said, sure. I sent my number back to him. He calls me, and we joke about this now, but his very first sentence to me, he said, Drew, like he said, I'm Chris Ferry, and I'm just going to be very transparent with you. I want to steal you. Okay. He said he had looked into me and seen what I was doing and absolutely believed wholeheartedly that I was in this for the right reasons, doing it for the right thing, and he wanted me to be part of his Boca family. And so the rest is history. I've been working with Chris, and I've been part of Boca for well over a year now. And my life has excelled. Chris has followed through with everything that he promised me, and then some. He loves my children. I love his family. We are family. At Boca we pride ourselves on being family, and we definitely are. You know, I've went through a lot of very painful and heartfelt, crazy things in my life. And I blame the drugs for every terrible thing that ever happened to me. That's where I was messing up. I blamed it was the drugs, the reason why I was such a monster, right? Wrong. The drugs were never Dru's problem. Dru's problem was Dru. There's going to have to come a time in your life when you decide to say enough is enough, and you need to take ownership for all the things that you had done. Not only do you have to clean up the wreckage of your past, but you know what? You're starting to pave this better future that we all have had hopes and dreams that we could all eventually acquire for our life. We don't have to live miserable anymore. We don't have to live there. It does not have to own us. It does not have to dictate our decision making anymore. When we cross that threshold into recovery, things begin to shift. I've done a video before on shifting. Our mind starts shifting. We now have this thing called a choice, right? And with this choice, we can take our life in any direction that we choose, correct? And so I did. I acquired this amazing sponsor who's been my sponsor for over 3 years now. I love you to death, Victor. And I tell people all the time, you're only as successful in recovery as you are by the person who's guiding you. I give him so much credit. He won't take it. He says, and he's right. I did put in all this work to become the man that I am today, okay? And but without him, I would have never been able to do it. You see, humility is a big part of my life today. I stay humble. See, I'm no better than the person who's coming in the door day one, okay? I'm no better than that person. There's not one person in recovery that's any better than the next person. I don't care if you got 50 years sober or if you're 50 or 50 seconds sober. Life on life's terms is a lot of the times isn't what we want it to be, especially in recovery. Because now we're in recovery, we got to feel these feelings. Okay, we no longer masking our feelings. We no longer numbing ourselves away anymore. Now we have to feel. And so, in the beginning recovery, for me, getting out of bed was an accomplishment. Let me add into this part of my story is that now I lost my children, of course, in my active addiction, and now I have absolute custody of my children. Working on getting my boys back into my life as we speak. You can have it all back. You can take control of your life, and you can have it all back. I stopped feeling sorry for myself. That was my problem as well, is I felt so sorry for myself. I felt like I was that one person. I was unique in the struggle with the disease of addiction. Why was the world being so hard on me? Why did I have to go through all those hardships and crazy and messed up and all the abuse and all the violence and hate that I had to experience my entire life? Why me, God? And I turned my back on God. And all he wanted to do was to lift me up. I blame God. I'll own that. I absolutely did. I blame God for all of the devastation that I had went through. But it wasn't God. He gave Dru Hicks this thing called free will. And I used it for every wrong reason that you could possibly imagine. You see, the higher power, whom I choose to call God, absolutely loves me. Wants to see me excel in life. God did not place any one of us on this earth to struggle. He did not put us here for that. acquiring this amazing life that I have today, let me tell you what, it did not come without a lot of work. It came with a lot of work, and there were many days, I mean many days, that I wanted, that I had called my sponsor in the beginning and told him I didn't, this is not for me. Recovery is not for Dru. I cannot make recovery work for my life. But I didn't give up, and I kept pushing forward, and I got through the hard days, and you will get through the hard days. Our biggest problem, I know, well, I can say, I don't want to say our, because it may not be yours, but my biggest problem was, even in early recovery, is I felt so sorry for myself. I took ownership of my life, and it enabled me to go from victim to victor mentality. Working with this 12-step program with the spiritual principles that are now applied in my life on a daily basis today, daily basis, they are applied in my life with my prayers and meditation and my higher power, whom I choose to call God. I am able to live free and clear without using a drink or drug to get through my days. When these adversities will cross my path, these adversities, I am not exempt to life on life's terms and the adversities that come with it. Let me tell you what, I am not. I experience this day in and day out, just like the rest of y'all. I don't find validation today in my ability in sticking a needle in my body 50 times in one day. I don't find that. I don't need that validation today. Anybody who's watching this tonight or might watch the replay later, still out there in their active addiction, still sick and suffering, still confused, still overwhelmed, and still lost. And believe in your mind, and let me tell you what, your mind can play tricks on your this is the most powerful muscle in your body is your brain, okay? Because it will send you on a downward spiral. It's absolute hardest thing that I had to learn in recovery is that, my mind can be very powerful, can be very evil, can be very loving. It can be a lot of things, So your mind might be telling you that you can't make recovery work, that you are not worth recovery, that you have went through all this pain and you can't do it. I am living and breathing proof that recovery can and will work for your life. And not only work for your life, that you can excel in life. You don't just have to just get by. You can excel in life. There's no limitations to where it is that you can take your life. We get this life one time, and that's it. And it's gone before you know it. Reach out. Get a hold of me. Like I said, I work for the most amazing treatment facility in the country. I am the National Outreach Coordinator for Boca Recovery Center. Okay, talk about a person who was 25-year active addiction, 22 years IV drug user, 15 years in the penitentiary. I absolutely had nothing. When I made that transition into recovery, I had probably 3 or 4 days at the max worth of clothes in a black trash bag in a sober living house. No money, broke, lost, no family, didn't have nothing, no children. They weren't part of my life. But I have it all back today. 3 years and 4 months later, this is the man I am today. But it didn't happen without work. I worked. And I worked. In the days that I wanted to quit, I kept pushing forward. I kept pushing. I had amazing people backing me. I had some support and I had some love, and I was guided in the right direction. I did not do this by myself. I will never take the credit. Without God, without my sponsor, without Pastor Pat, I know you're watching, I love you. Without all these amazing people in my life, I would have never gotten to where I am at today. Please, Pick up the phone. It is possible. You know, I'm not asking you to do too much legwork here. All I'm asking you to do is pick up the phone. Make a call. If you don't feel like making a call, and I kind of understand that because I remember my active addiction, I wouldn't have called nobody, especially somebody who was sober. You can message me. You can message me right here to this page right here. You know, your life has more value and meaning than you could ever possibly imagine. You don't see it today, I understand, because I didn't see it either. But I eventually did. I love absolutely every one of you. And I want to see you all go on and live the best life that you can live. We get it one time. You need to start living today. And if you want this better quality of life that I speak so highly of, please message me tonight. I'm here for you. And I love you. I hope you all enjoyed hearing a little bit of piece of me. It's my life. But today I own it. And all the devastation and all the craziness that I had went through in my own life has no bearing on my life today. It doesn't dictate the direction that I get to take my life today. It doesn't. Today I take ownership of my life. This is the man I am today. This is the man that my higher power, God, who has always wanted me to have. You know, this is the life. I love you all dearly. Please reach out. Let me get some shout outs before I go. Alexis, it's good to see you on here. Benita, good to see you on here. Please let me know what you felt about the video. I always like to get feedback from you guys. You guys know that. Put it in the comment section. And please share this video out. Please share it out. Somebody out there who's out there sick and suffering needs to hear this tonight. Athena, it's nice to see you. Jennifer Law, how are you? Stacy Lynn, how are you? Lisa Adams, how are you? Bethany Bowen, how are you doing? Mary Tuttle, I hope I said that correct. How are you doing, Mary? Debbie, and I can never say your last name, but you know who I'm talking about. Thank you, Debbie. Joy Shu, how are you tonight? How are you tonight? Jonathan, what's going on, brother? Leslie, how are you doing tonight? Tori, how you doing? Tori's pinned my phone number in the feed. If you guys wanna, if you need my number, it's right there. Amy, how are you doing tonight? You're very welcome. Hey, Tammy. Lori, how are you doing? Shirley Casisis, I hope I said it right. I'm sorry if I didn't. I love you, Shirley. I'm sorry. Star, how are you doing? Ian, how are you? Michelle Jeffrey, how are you doing? I love you too. Lori Jacobs, how are you? Angela Witt. Bob Mullis. I hope I said that right, brother. Angel Bryan, it's nice to see you on here as well. Carlina, it's nice to see you on here. Justin Cravener. I hope I said your name right, brother. I butcher names all the time, and it's never intentional, you guys. I love you guys. I'm so sorry. You guys have all these unique names, so I'm a simple-minded creature. Stacy Lynn, how are you? Haley, how are you? Arminta, there she is. I love Arminta. Arminta, if everybody doesn't know, Arminta is from my hometown. She has been a supporter of mine since pretty much day one of my sobriety. I've went through some stuff, you know, because we all go through stuff in recovery, but she has always, always, always supported me, and I love her dearly. Arminta, I love you. Rachel Foxell, how are you doing over there in Australia? So many of you beautiful people still on here. Please, you guys, would you do me a huge favor? Get this shared out into every group that you're part of. Because you know what? I just think, you know, there's so many people that are out there still sick and suffering that will benefit from this video tonight, you know. I hope you enjoyed me getting genuine and transparent with you guys. We just got to. If you want to get better, you're going to have to get vulnerable, okay? And I practice what I preach with you guys, and so I gave you a little bit of part of me, my life, and the things that I've had to endure. But let me tell you what, on the flip side of that devastation that I had to go through is that we do, if the work is applied, let's emphasize that, if the work is applied, we can live a happy and successful and meaningful life without the use of drugs and alcohol, right? I love you all to death. Kay Phillips, how are you doing? Penny, how are you? Mona, how are you? Liz St. Pierre, how are you? Sorry, I got these bugs flying all around me. Sorry, guys. So please share it out, and I'll be back tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. From now on, Monday through Sunday, my videos are all at 8 p.m. No more 5 p.m. until probably the fall sometime. So throughout the summer, they're all going to be at 8 p.m. I absolutely love you all to death. You know, recovery is possible. Recovery is possible, but it's going to take a lot of love, a lot of encouragement, a lot of support. And I promise you, you will always get that from me. I love you all. You already know. Clean and sober. That's what's up.